Hello, Snugglebugs. Welcome to today's Hearthstone video. Going over the top 5 decks to play 1 week after the mini set was released, or about a week. I guess it's probably 6 days, but you get the idea. A little caveat: this is for standard only. All decks I picked were ones with over 1,000 games, of course, because we wanted to make sure there was ones with a big enough sample size. So if you're looking, you may see some with higher or lower, without as many games played, which could skew the results. But to not take too long to get into it, we'll just get into it right now with number 5, sitting with the pure Paladin with a 56.7% win rate, which for those who are used to seeing these kind of lists, to have your number 5 deck that high makes you think that there must be a lot of decks that are super negative in order to push the top 5 this high. I will say this pure Paladin deck list, if we're looking at over here on the side, okay, you can see the whole thing. It's honestly pretty standard. I think this is basically the pure Paladin deck list that have been played for a long time. I think it's just making a bit more of a comeback because there's, as you'll see, a lot more control style decks now that are being played, and pure Paladin with its tempo just has a way to combat those decks. Plus, it has some good early game as well. So I think this deck is just making a comeback based around the meta around it. I do apologize if I inhale more deeply than normal. If you can't tell, I am very blocked up in the sinus region. But yeah, pretty standard. Basically, it's just a high tempo deck. You just play on curve and hope that you effectively can just whittle your opponent down and possibly get some big late game bombs. Count tests. That's pretty much it. Nothing super interesting here, at least in my opinion, but let me know if you'd like to see some gameplay of it, and maybe we'll bring it to you. But coming in at number 4, we actually have the Mech Rogue, which I'm not entirely surprised at because it was doing quite well before the mini set, and it got some love during the mini set. Although I am kind of surprised to see that this most popular deck actually plays a little down lower, but you can kind of see it down there. It plays the Prison of Yogg-Saron, which is a little on the higher end, which I personally never seen played in Mech Rogue before, but I guess just maybe to get some random finishers on the high end. But yeah, again, it's pretty much what you'd expect. You play your cheap mechs, 1 or 2 survive. You get, I think probably the thing that's the most common is you get from the scrap heap. Usually seems to always give you one, at least with Wind Fury. Play your Inventomatic, buff it up a couple of times with Wind Fury, start hitting your opponent in the face for 10 as early as like turn 4, 3 or 4. And then, I'll say worst case scenario, you start to magnetize things here that give you coins or stealth, and that just allows you to sort of go over the top. And then you do have a couple of late game finishers like your Krakatoa. Personally, I don't even usually see Mech Rogue decks, whether they win or lose, getting all the way up to turn 6 to play Voltron, but of course it is good enough to include in the deck. Overall, this deck is very powerful, very quick. If you're trying to climb to Legend especially, I do think this would be one that if you have the cards to make, would be a good candidate for that fast climb. Number 3 here, it's actually a deck. I guess we have technically seen some iteration of it with Thaddeus, but in my opinion, we haven't seen a more classic control Warlock deck in the meta for a while. And I feel like the main reason it's up here with the 58.8% win rate is, again, as I mentioned with the pure Paladin, the increase of control play lately has led to wanting to play Warlock. Now, the Doomkin is actually, I'm kind of glad this card is finally seeing play. Let me see if I can't shift this up so you can see Doomkin a little bit better here. But it is take one of your opponent's empty mana crystals, so it speeds you up, slows them down. Obviously, 6 mana, 3/4 is a little rough, but in a control, potentially mirror, that 1 mana could make all the difference. And of course, it has the Sargeras Bomb. You have your classic Symphony of Sins. I call it classic now because that card wasn't great when it first came out, but now is, in my opinion, one of the stronger cards. Amazing what 1 mana reduction can do. Apologies on the sound. But yeah, just overall, it doesn't rely on the luck shenanigans of the Thaddeus Warlock. It's just powerful from trying to keep your opponent's board cleared. You got some cheap bombs where you can still play the imposing Anubasath, sorry. And then, of course, make 7/7s with Giants with Rush, with Forge of Wills. And then, of course, you have, like I said, your Doomkins, your Gigafins, and then you're gonna try to win off of the Sargeras alone, of the constant pressure that you can apply to your opponent. Overall, I actually think this is going to be a deck that I'll definitely try out. I usually prefer Curse Warlock, but control decks are my thing. I'm a big fan of Warlock usually and what they can do, so I think I might bring this to the channel here shortly. But let me know what you would like to see, and hopefully I can bring it to you. Number two, probably no surprise to most people, we have our, well, maybe a surprise that it's not number one, but it's pretty close. With a 60.3% win rate, we do have the Arcane Hunter, which has not changed a lot, really. It's about getting, I think the Celestial Shot might be the only new card that came out, which, I mean, considering there's only three cards, I think, per class, it's not the worst. Plus, it does play the Yogg-Saron. But now to be able to hit them for 3 damage, it's kind of like 5 damage for 3 mana in a way, because it gives your next spell +2. And then, of course, just has the Star-Strung Bow to allow you to hit your opponent for effectively 12. And by the time you get this down, it's probably only a 2 or 3 mana weapon, which is crazy. And then you just play Yogg for, of course, that late game finishing potential. Honestly, though, I prefer this deck over, I think, the big, seemingly non-stop big Beast Hunter that was around for about a year. I don't know if it's just because I haven't seen this as played as much yet in my game time. Maybe the big Beast Hunter just got annoying to me because we've seen it everywhere for a long period. But to me, so far, this deck has yet to be that oppressive, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But before then, we'll go hop into deck number one, which to me was kind of a surprise. As for deck number one, we have Control Warrior. Now, I know a lot of people, we've seen it, a lot of people who are playing have seen it, so in that sense, you're not surprised. But for, again, about a year and a half, Control Warrior was one of the lowest win rate decks in the game. It started making more popularity with Titans, coming back up with, of course, the, I don't know, I'll probably have to shift it up again a little, but with the Odin Prime Designate as your win condition to give your armor attack value effectively. But I think what really pushed this over the edge was, of course, when they made the change to the Craftsman's Hammer. So it effectively is a 7 attack power weapon after you play Odin the way that it works, as well as, honestly, Sanitize. This deck comes out with so much armor that it, even if you don't forge it, it becomes just such a big 4 mana AoE, which is huge. And then, of course, if you forge it first, you get the 3 armor, which just makes it a better AoE. And of course, with Odin, it's, it's great. But I think really what this did was one of the only things this deck was lacking was a way to get late enough in the game to play your Odin to then swing like 20 damage a turn with your armor conversion into attack, was earlier mid-game board clears. All it had before was really Brawl, and now it includes Sanitize, and this deck actually is a 40-card version with Thorbior and General Vizax as well for more board clears, and it really focuses more on just surviving to be able to play that Odin and then flip the script again in like a couple of turns later. I know a lot of people maybe aren't the hugest fan of this, and I get how frustrating especially the Odin can be, because there's not much you can do. Yeah, I'll even say that. There's not much. Once they play that, unless you're on the verge of winning, it's usually only a couple of turns later they gain like 20 armor, which helps them survive as well as they can smash you down. But as someone who thinks this takes some build-up, some survival, it effectively only has one win con for the most part, and as just honestly a fan of Control Warrior, I am maybe need to see that toned down a little. I'm not sure how they would do that per se. Maybe make it so Odin makes it so for every 2 armor you gain 1 attack or something like that. But I do think that seeing Control Warrior up high is good for me, my preferred playstyle. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Again, apologies for the nasally voice. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next one.